evaluation team. We are the project evaluators for CAFB's Produce Education Program. Unfortunately, Cody Dunitz, the PEP coordinator, is unavailable to join us today, so Dan and I will be your facilitators. To begin with, let me go through some of I have a list of individuals who signed up for the training, and I see in my attendee box that Araceli is on the call. Are you still on the call?
Yes, I'm here, and I'm also here with.
Okay. Do you have someone else on there as well?
Hi.
Yes.
Wait a minute.
Okay. And who's with you?
It's Ana Ramirez.
Ana Ramirez. Okay. Terrific.
Okay.
Okay. And Miguel Diaz is on the call. Can you hear me, Miguel?
Yeah. Hi.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Is there someone else joining you as well?
No, I'm the only one.
Okay. Well, welcome. Ruth Kennedy, are you on the call? Hello, Ruth, can you hear us? Okay, I'm going to ask you now, if you're not going to ask a question, please mute yourself. If you don't have mute on your phone, you can click on the icon next to your name to mute your name.
At the top of the screen.
At the top, oh, excuse me, at the top of the screen.
Green little microphone up there. You can click that.
Do you see that green microphone, everyone? Okay, I need those of you who are either on a computer headset or on speakerphone to please mute your phone. There's background coming in.
We have someone speaking in Spanish in the background, and we're hearing people in the background. If you could please click the green button on the top left of the screen.
No me pongo esto. Le voy a decir que hable español.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. I think you have it. Thank you. One other individual, Joshua, are you on the line?
No, my name is Isabel. Joshua over the computer.
Okay, turn down your volume.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm sorry. That is Joshua is who?
No, my name is Isabel.
Isabel.
Yeah.
What agency are you with?
37.
Okay. I will check with Cody on this. Let's go ahead and get started. Just
hello?
Yes.
Excuse me, this is Ruth Kennedy.
Yes, hi. You're joined
I'm sorry.
us.
I thought my computer had a microphone, and so I didn't use the phone until just now.
Okay.
So I'm gonna mute.
right.
I just wanted you to know I was here.
Okay. Thank you for letting us know that you're there. It actually works better if you do not have a headset connected to a computer. Sometimes there's feedback.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Can you hang on just one moment? We're going to... Hello? Yes, hello. Who just joined us?
Nancy from Second Harvest Food Bank.
Nancy, okay. Yes, I have you listed. Welcome. Glad you could join us. I'm Denise Cintron-Perales, and along with Dr. Dan Perales, we're the project evaluators for the CAFB PEP program, and we're conducting the training. So we're going to go ahead and get started. A few housekeeping things. If you'll please put your phone on mute at all times. If hopefully if anybody else joins us, they'll let us know. And however, we welcome any questions that you may have during the training. Feel free to jump in and ask us any questions. If you were participating in the PEP program in 2014 and conducted interviews at that time, and you have something valuable to share, please feel free to do that. It's an interactive training, and we don't want you to feel like you have to wait to the very end just to ask questions. If you do want to ask a question, unmute yourself and then make sure you mute yourself again because oftentimes there's a lot of feedback. Okay, and then this training is to acquaint all of you who are new to the process with conducting the PEP interviews. And you should have received a packet of information with various items, including surveys in English and Spanish, a cover letter from Cody, clipboards, and recipe cards. And the recipe cards that you receive, once you start looking at your survey, you'll see that you received up to 4 recipe cards that are, and those recipe cards are listed in your survey. And those are for the lessons that you did during the time period of February through May, which is when we're doing this evaluation. So just to go over a quick overview of today's training. During the training, we'll go over what you can expect from the interview process, and we'll ask you to watch a video. You received a link to that video in an email, and we'll get to that pretty quickly. And then we'll come back and Dr. Dan Perales will go through the survey, and this is an opportunity for you to ask any questions as we go through the survey. Once again, feel free to jump in and ask any questions along the way. Don't hesitate to interrupt me. Then we'll talk about the materials that you received in your packet that I already mentioned, the surveys and clipboards and recipe cards, and returning the surveys to us. Then there'll be a final opportunity to ask questions. And lastly, we're going to ask you to complete an online evaluation of today's training. We want to hear what your thoughts were on today's training. This is the first time we've done this by webinar. Okay, so anybody on the call who completed interviews in 2014? By any chance? Ruth, were you one that did it in 2014? Okay, I can't hear you, Ruth. Okay, so for those of you who completed...
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I didn't know how to mute it, how to unmute it.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, did you do the interviews in 2014?
I helped with them, yes.
Okay, so you'll notice that this time around the survey is shorter. We received feedback from all of you, and we heard what you were saying, and we kept in all the important questions that will answer what people learned, what they remembered, and how they're applying what they learned in the PEP lessons, which is all what our funder wants to know. And so we've shortened it as much as possible. And the more you're acquainted with the survey, the more you'll see how fast it goes. So here are some pictures of people actually doing the survey, and each of the interviews should take only about 4 to 5 minutes. You'll see that from the sample video that you'll be watching. Okay, so we have people on the call that are, or should be on the call, that are PEP sites and non-PEP sites. Now the PEP sites were those where you conducted the education lessons, and we're asking you to interview clients that have participated in at least 3 PEP lessons. In some cases, maybe your food pantry only did 1 or 2 lessons, and in which case you receive those recipe cards, and it's okay that you'll be doing interviews. So each one of you, we've asked that you do a total of 12 interviews at each of the PEP sites. Now we also have non-PEP sites. So these are the sites where the clients did not receive the education in the last 6 months. And as we go through the survey, Dan will point out the differences in some of the questions that are in the survey. So the PEP sites are Fallbrook Food Pantry, San Marcos, La Purísima, Newport Church, Native American United Methodist Church, El Sol Academy, St. Anne, Cortlandt Street Apartments, Lamont Pentecost, Under Grace, Bakersfield New Life Center, Catholic Charities, St. Joseph's, SVDP, and Nineveh Outreach. So if you did not hear your organization's name, then you're not a PEP site, you are a non-PEP site. For the non-PEP sites, you received a letter from Cody that explains how many surveys you'll be conducting, and those sites will be conducting between 15 to 30 surveys. We've included both English and Spanish versions of the survey in your packets, and you'll have a chance to go through those when you do go through the video. Okay, so now we're going to ask you to continue to mute your phone and to watch the video. You should have received a link to that video in an email, but you also have it here as well. We're going to give you about 5 to 7 minutes. We'll check back with you. Let's see, it's 11:15, and I'll check in to see if everybody's back by 11:20, and if not, we'll give you a couple of more minutes. So please do watch the video now, come back, and we'll go through the survey after the video. Any questions?
No.
Okay, so we'll see you soon.
Please note that we cannot.
What, Dan?
No, that's all right.
Okay. Okay, we're still hearing some noise. Okay, has everyone had a chance to watch the video?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Who said
Very
yes?
Second Harvest Food Bank.
Okay. I guess we'll wait.
good.
Okay.
Ruth Kennedy, I saw it.
Okay. Terrific. Okay, so we're missing Miguel.
I think he saw it.
Yes.
'Cause
Okay.
Yeah, this is Miguel. Yes.
you saw it.
Okay. And Marilyn. Marilyn? Okay, we'll wait another minute. Okay, did someone just join us? We're going to go ahead and get started. Hopefully you found that video helpful, and you know that we have that video. You can watch that video at any time. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go through the survey, and I'll go through this first page. And now, does everybody have their surveys? I hope did everybody receive them? Okay, so if you have that in front of you, this is the cover page of the survey. Now, what we're going to go through is a sample that's already been completed. And what we'd like for you to do, pardon me?
Hello, this is Marilyn. I was trying to access you with my microphone, but we couldn't, so I decided to try to call. I just wanted to let you know that Mary and Marilyn are watching from La Parissima.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Have you seen the video?
Yes, we've been here since the very beginning. You just couldn't hear us, so I decided to try to call instead of using just the computer for the voice, and that worked better.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you. And once again, if everyone will just mute themselves, and if you have questions along the way, feel free to jump in and ask any questions. So what you're looking at, once again, is the sample survey that's already been filled out. So the surveys that you have your agency already blackened out. If for some reason that is not completed on the surveys that you have, then use one of these blank lines and fill it in with the name of your agency. Once again, you should have up to 4 recipe cards that correspond to the lessons that your agency did, and Dan will review that a little bit later on. So the survey that you're going to see will already have a sample. It's not going to be necessarily the list that's in your survey. On this first page, we want to make sure that you complete your name and the date ahead of time. What you'll notice throughout, highlighted in yellow, are interviewer notes. And these are very important that you become very familiar with them ahead of time. So overall, we want to be sure that you do not hand the survey to the client and have them fill it out. We want to know what they remember, and if they are handed a survey and they see all the possible responses, then they're not going to be able to answer honestly. So please remember not to hand them the survey. We also don't want you to prompt them or give them the possible response choices. In all but one case, we ask that you ask the question and then record their responses. Okay. PEP site survey, and then the control survey is slightly different, and Dan will mention that as he goes through the survey. So Dan, I'll hand it back to you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone on the call who is a control site and not an intervention site? By that I mean you have a site that did not receive the PEP education lessons. Anyone on the call who is a control site? Okay. Well, just in case somebody just jump in, I'm going to address both questionnaires. But I'm going to go through the intervention questionnaire, which is the primary one that we'll be using for all of you here. Now, if you look at this page, you'll see yellow notes and you also see stop signs. Now, the yellow sections here are interviewer notes. These are things we want you to read as you go through this, and it'll help you complete the form in an efficient and helpful manner. You know, as you saw from the video, as you ask people questions about if they receive food here, that's the first question. If they receive food, the answer is yes, you continue. If they say no, you stop, and you then find another person to ask the questions to. The same thing is throughout to this first page. If they say yes and ask them if they prefer to English or Spanish, and if they prefer Spanish, then you should have with you a Spanish form that you can use to ask the questions and send that to us eventually. And then the other critical thing here, they say yes to the first two, is are they 18 or older? They should be 18 or older before they can answer the survey. If yes, then you continue. If no, you stop and find another client. Fourth, for the intervention folks, did you get food here? And it's important that you point out here that in your pantry during the months from February through May, and this is important because that was the period of the education occurring. If they said June, then they're not part of the educational intervention because you're not doing educational intervention in June, only February through May. And if they say yes, you continue. If no, you stop and find another client. And then 5, do you remember hearing about MyPlate from our educators here? And again, emphasis is here at your particular location. And at that point, what you want to do is show them, you should have on the back of your clipboard the MyPlate image. It won't have any words on it, but it'll show the image. And people will recognize it right away, and they'll remember that they heard the message here. And if they say yes, then you continue. If they say no or I don't know, then you stop, and that person cannot complete the rest of the survey, and you find another client. Assuming they say yes throughout this, next slide, please. Then you go to the next page, and on this page, you'll notice that once they say yes, that you need to read this point of, this is a form of informed consent, basically saying the survey will take about 5 minutes. We're not taking your name. Your responses will be kept confidential. There's no right or wrong answer. You can stop answering anytime they want. They can stop. They don't have to continue. And if you tell them if you decide not to participate, it will not affect your ability to receive food here today or in the future. That's important. People don't want to feel like they're answering this because they're afraid they're going to lose getting food. And so that last sentence is very, very important to convey to the client there. And if they say yes after you read that, then you continue. If they say no, then you stop and you find another client. The first question, when we get right to it, is question 7. What nutrition information do you remember about how to use MyPlate to feed yourself? And this is a knowledge question. And this is the one you have to really listen carefully to them because you're going to have different kinds of responses. You will have in some cases where people will say, make half your plate fruits and vegetables. That MyPlate is made up of 5 different food groups, fruits, vegetables, grains, and so forth. But you may have somebody say something like, well, you know, to eat non-fatty meat. And that's really this item number 5 there, which is add lean protein. So some of the ways that they say something, you might have to say, can you give me an example? can you give me an example of what you mean? But don't put words into their mouths. Just, you know, they're almost there. They seem to know what it is that you're asking about. And then if you ask them, can you give me an example? Then they may be able to tell you more specifically within the categories that are there. It's going to be your best judgment as to what they're saying, how it fits in here. Anybody to remember all of those things. If they say, I don't know, you continue on to the next question.
Just a reminder that when you're reading this question and all of the other questions that follow, do not read the answer to the client. Okay? And in most cases, we were asking you to check all the answers that the client has. In some cases, we may say only check one. So that's where it's really important to follow those interviewer notes.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, in the 2014 surveys, we found a few cases where the data collectors were actually reading these questions off, and they misunderstood the purpose of the question. So it's really important. We don't want to put words into people's mouths. Next slide, please.
Oh, I just wanted to point out one other thing here. You know, as Dan said, we're asking you to interpret what their response is and see if it fits into one of these categories. And it's always a good idea to ask them, can you give me an example? So you're sure whether or not it fits into one of those categories. If it does not, and you're really unsure, then check the comment section and put their response there. But we have so many responses here, it more than likely fits one of those.
Okay, so this page is for the control site. And folks, what I mean by control site, in order for us to be able to show whether or not your educational program is working, we need to have another group of people who didn't receive the education. We gather very similar information, the same information, and then we do analysis that shows that whether or not your program worked. And what I'm saying here is that in our previous study in 2012, we showed, using the control site, that this educational approach does work. It does make a difference in terms of people's knowledge and their behaviors. And to the point where now the USDA, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, is pilot testing this same program that you are part of in Hawaii and in a Native American community, I believe, in Utah. So it is something that is being looked at as a useful way to get education to people, and a quick way to get education to people. And I point out this particular slide just shows that for the control group, the question that relates to question number 5, which relates to in the intervention group, which relates to, do you remember hearing about My Plate, is not on here because do you remember hearing about My Plate from our educators here, because the control site did not receive any education from the educators. And that's why I put up that slide, just to show that the difference. Denise? Next slide. And again, this is the control site, and here the question here is, have you ever heard about My Plate? Whereas in the intervention site, it's question number 7. So this is a little bit different. Next slide, please. That's for the control site. Now, back to the intervention site, which most of you are here, are doing that. Question number 7 again was, what information do you remember about how to use My Plate? This is question number 8. And question number 8 is, how have you used My Plate to prepare food for yourself or for your family? So here's what we want to know is, what behavior have they used based on what you showed them, based on the recipes that they got, and are they, and here again, you do not read the answers, and check all the answers that are very, very close to this, but again, you can say, give me an example. They might say, you know, I'm giving them more vegetables. Well, give me an example. And they say, well, I'm cooking more vegetables for them. They're drinking low-fat dairy food. And so they'll tell you what they're doing. They may say something like, my family's eating more chicken instead of red meat, which means they're eating more lean meats. We're not eating as many flour tortillas. We're having some whole grain tortillas or some whole grain bread. And that's another way of saying they're eating more whole grains. So again, listen to what they're saying and ask them to give you an example, and you'll be able to more clearly be able to indicate what they really are doing. At the same time, don't be shy about putting in comments. And here, for example, this is a client tries to add more vegetables to her family dinners, and she puts chili powder on the vegetables, and her family likes to eat the vegetables because of that. You're going to have people tell you some stories about what they're doing, so don't be afraid to put those comments in there because they really add to what people are doing. Okay, any questions?
Just a reminder to write clearly so that, because this is also part of the evaluation, and any comments, we'll be analyzing those as well.
Okay, so in question number 9, again for the intervention, the sites that are doing the PEP education, and then we want to know, what are they doing with those recipes? Did you make or modify any of the recipes you received here, again here in the last 4 months? Not that you got at the grocery store or at a WIC clinic or something, but that you got here in the last 4 months. And now here is a way to do this without having to ask all these questions here. Let's say you say, well, how about carrots? Carrots. Did you get this recipe card? And if so, did you make it, this recipe? And they'll say to you, well, did you make the exact recipe? And they'll say, no, I didn't make the exact recipe. I modified it. I made a modification, something different, but I used the recipe card as the basis for that. Or they may say, I made the exact recipe, but then I also added my own things for my family. Or they may say, I did not make the recipe at all. So it can only be one of those choices that we want you to gather the information on. So again, here is one of those questions where you ask them and you kind of listen to what they say, and you'll be able to check off the correct category because they either made the exact recipe, they modified the recipe, they did both, or they didn't do it at all. It's one of those things there. And of course, you may get some people who said, I did not get this card, I don't remember getting the card, which is the same thing.
I just wanted to point out, Dan, that for questions 9 through 11, the list of recipe cards and fruits and vegetables are unique to each particular site. So your food pantry, your surveys match the lessons that you did in the recipe cards that you distributed, and they are the same for questions 9, 10, and 11. So the sample survey that you're looking at, if you're thinking, oh, I didn't do carrots, cabbage, celery, and corn, that's right, you didn't, but your survey should correspond to what you did do. And for question number 9, just a reminder that as you saw in the video, show the recipe card to the client. Sometimes they even want to hand it, hold it and look at it, and then give you a response as to whether or not they made it.
So when you go to do your surveys, have those 4 or 2 or 3 or 1 recipe card, depending on what Cody has put on the survey forms that she sent you, and she's the one who set those up. Have those cards with you so you can show the client, because that kind of recall helps. That kind of card recall helps them answer the question properly. Okay. Question number 10. Now, what we want to know here is, did your family eat any of the vegetables that are listed here that Cody will have listed here on question number 10? In the last 4 months, did you eat carrots or cabbage or watermelon or whatever she has put down there? And if yes, where did you get each fruit or vegetable? So you ask by each one. Carrots, where did you get them? And you don't have to read the answer. They'll tell you, well, I got it here, I got it at the grocery store, I got it at the farmer's market, other places. And they'll be able to tell you where they got it, or they didn't eat it at all. Or maybe they didn't eat it. And so check off only one answer per fruit or vegetable. And here's what, and also enter comments. Here's a comment. The client said she grows her own celery in her yard. So don't be afraid to add comments too in there. Okay.
Okay. I just wanted to point out, Dan, that one of the differences between question 9 and 10 is for question 9, we're asking to check only 1 response per recipe card. And then for question 10, we're asking that you check all that apply. So that's why it's really important that you review these notes and that you follow the interviewer notes as written. Okay, and just a reminder for everyone to put yourself on mute, please.
Okay. So let's go on to the next slide, please. Okay. Next slide. Okay, this is for the control groups. Those of you who might have a control group, it's the question that's not there is the question that relates to did you make the recipes? Because the control group, the people who did not get the PEP education, should not have received recipe cards. So that's why that question is not there. Otherwise, they're the same questions that were for the intervention group about how they've used my plate and where they're getting the food that they're eating. Next slide. Now, this is for the intervention group again. This is question number 11 and 12. These are the last two questions in the survey. So this is a much shorter survey than before and much shorter than what we did for the original study in 2012. And then we'd like to know how likely are you to buy any of the fruits or vegetables that are listed here. And again, we want to know. So they receive carrots, or they receive watermelon, or they receive squash. We want to know if how likely they are to buy. And all you have to do is ask them, how likely are you to buy? Very likely, somewhat likely, not likely. And if they say not likely, then ask them why not. And they may say, oh, it's too expensive, or oh, my family doesn't like that particular vegetable. That's why I wouldn't buy it. I'm not going to buy it because I can get it here, and I can get it here for free, and not likely for other reason. If it's another reason, then list down what the other reason is in the other reason box there, or in the comments box, either way. And of course, if they say, I don't know, you check that one off. So there's only one answer per food or vegetable, but you begin with how likely are you to buy, very likely, somewhat likely, or not likely. And then if they say not likely, you ask them why not, so we can categorize this more accurately. And again, listen to what they say and add any of their comments, very short comments that they make. You can add them in there too. Question 12, and then we want to know, what do you do with all those fresh fruits and vegetables that you receive from here, our pantry? What do you do? And tell them, it's important, tell them, your responses to this will be kept confidential, and it will not affect your ability to get food here in the future, because what we have found is some people, when we ask this question, were afraid that if they said, well, I throw it away or I give it to my neighbors if I can't eat all of it, that there was going to be some kind of retribution for that. And the answer is no. We really do want to know what happens to it. We're finding over the research we've done over the last couple of years is that they're using it. They're eating it. They're eating all of it, or they're giving it to they're giving some of it to friends and family. They're freezing some of it raw and they're eating it later, or they're cooking and preserving it, or cooking and freezing some of it. But they also have situations where sometimes they get too much of something and they end up throwing it away if it spoils or if it expires, or some other reason. If it's another reason, then you put it in a comment box. For example, a client likes to make smoothies with leftover fruit that she freezes. And that's a really good comment to capture what people are also doing, which may also link it to the recipes too. So again, that's an important question. The funding agency for CAFB wants to know what are people doing with the fresh fruits and vegetables they're getting from these various pantries. It's really important to try to find that out. Okay. And then the last page is the demographics. We need to know some background. Ask people their age, and most people we have found will tell you exactly how old they are. If they say no, I don't want to tell you, say okay, just check the little box, decline to answer. Ask them what ethnic group they belong to, whether Latinos or Caucasian, African Americans, and don't check off the box yourself. You let them tell you how they identify, because different people identify different ways no matter what you think they look like. What is your primary language? The language they speak primarily, that's the #1 language. Their gender, and there's various choices. And then how many children live with you who are under age 18? And so small children, teenagers, put in the actual number. If they say none, then you can check off the box there. And then how many people live with you who are 18 or older, and then you put in that number too. So at that point, at the end of that, you say thank you, and you will give them a gift, and Denise will describe what those gifts are. The next page gives you an opportunity, Denise, to add any notes that you want to say, any comments that you want to write yourself. Sometimes you talk to somebody and they really say a lot. They share stories with you. They get excited about what's been happening since they got this fresh fruits and vegetables and they receive the recipes. And you're welcome to put in some comments there, a few notes that you think will help us to better see what people are doing with the produce they're getting at your site. Denise, do you want to say anything else about the gifts?
Well, actually, I'm going to step back, as you can see, to the demographic page. And here's where there's another script that's really important that you read this. We want people to know that whatever they tell us is confidential. So if you'll read the script in that in the top yellow box, in order to provide better services, we would like to ask you for some demographic information. This information will also be kept confidential. So I wanted to point that out. And then in terms of the gifts, you should have received, there were a variety of gifts that went out, and there were hats and aprons. And if you did not receive them, then contact your food bank because they would have them. And if for some reason they don't have it, then contact myself while Cody is out of town, and we'll get in touch with CAFB and make sure that you get the thank you gifts. Just a couple of final things before we move on from this slide in terms of the surveys in general. We talked about, if you remember, all those questions where there's stop signs. So if you start doing a survey and someone does not fit that criteria, for example, maybe they're under 18, then we want you to discard that survey. That no longer counts for the 12 surveys that you need to complete, and please do not send it to us. You'll only send completed forms. I know that as we went through the survey item by item, it may seem a little bit long, but as you saw in the video, once you're really familiar with the survey, it's only about 4 to 5 minutes at most. Lastly, please feel free to write any comments and write them as clearly as possible. I know you'll be using a clipboard and you're trying to do the interview as quickly as possible. The comments are also part of the evaluation, and we want to be able to read them, so we appreciate that. Okay, now talking about your packet of information. In the packet that you received from Cody, this is a list of some of the materials that you should have received. We want to make sure that you go through your packet and make sure you have everything that we list here. There should have been a cover letter, and that contains important information, so make sure that you read it. You received PEP surveys and non-PEP surveys, meaning the intervention survey for the PEP sites and the control survey for the non-PEP sites. You have surveys both in English and Spanish. If you don't have someone on staff, if you start to complete a survey and the individual speaks only Spanish, but you have someone else in your group that can conduct the interview in Spanish, then hand that survey over to that person. You received 3 clipboards with the blank My Plate image, and you can show that image for at least 2 of the questions when you're asking about My Plate and what they remember about it. You received 3 pens and then a set of up to 4 recipe cards. Once again, those are unique to your food pantry. Those are the recipes that match the lessons that your pantry did from February through May. And that corresponds to your survey, so each site is different. You also received a checklist that you'll need to go through before you start the interviews. And then finally, a pre-addressed and stamped envelope that's addressed to Paralysis and Associates, that's us, and that's where you're going to put only completed surveys. Okay, so you want to be sure that you have all of these materials with you before you go ahead and get started on the day of the interviews. Your surveys in English and Spanish, your clipboard with the My Plate image, pens, more than 1 pen in case there's a problem with one of them, up to 4 recipe cards and the gifts of hats, t-shirts, and aprons that you will give to the interviewees to thank them. Once again, if you did not receive the gifts for the participants, contact your food bank. So on the day of the interviews, this is based on our experience. We found that it's best to do the interviews on the day of the food distribution before the distribution starts, and while clients are standing in line, or maybe at your particular location they're in a lobby. You can set up a table near the distribution area, and you can ask people if they would like to be interviewed before they get food. We found that that was their #1 choice. And but you can also, if you're at your site, it's easier for the clients to be interviewed afterwards. You can give them that option as well. And then you can put your thank you gifts in a visible spot for those people who agree to complete the interview.
And folks, you may find that people who, when they see the kinds of gifts you have, and your gifts are probably more important than you might think they are for people, but you may find that some of them may say, well, I'll answer your questions and get the gift after I get my food first. So either way, before, we have found works very well. And in some cases, people would prefer to wait until after they get their food, and they come over to your table, they answer your questions, 5 or 6 minutes of questions, and then they get their present and they're gone.
And we also want to stress that, unfortunately, there aren't enough gifts for all of your clients that come to your food distribution. So reserve the gifts only for the clients who agree to complete the survey. And here's some final notes for you. Just a reminder that the demonstration video is available for you to see once again, and that if you go through that, you'll see how quickly you can go through the survey, study the survey, read the interviewer notes, and become very acquainted with them. Make sure that you read the 2 scripts in the survey that early on that ask for permission to interview them, as well as the other script that explains that any information about their demographics is also kept confidential. So the more you're acquainted with the survey, the easier it'll be and the faster it will go. Also, another reminder, please don't give the survey to the clients. We want to know what they remember about the lessons and what they're doing with that information that they learned from you. We talked about the gifts, and if you're a PEP site, we suggest that you skip doing the lesson on the day of the interviews. We found that it can be too confusing with too much going on that day. Lastly, and this is an important one from our aspect as the evaluators, please complete the interviews and put them in the mail by July 17th. So that means that after today, you're going to feel comfortable whether you're going to review the survey, you're going to watch the video again, and you're going to go ahead and get started. And it should take maybe 1 or 2 food distributions for you to complete all 12 surveys at the PEP sites, and the control sites may take a little bit longer. So I know we've asked you to mute yourself, and we're trying to get through this and get you out of here by noon. But here's an opportunity for you to ask questions. So those of you who have muted yourself, feel free to ask any questions. And I had... Any questions?
No.
Okay. Okay, you can also email us or contact us by phone, and let's see, here we are. Okay, once again, I'm Denise, and Dan went through the survey with you. Feel free to contact us, especially while Cody is out of town. Here's our email address and our phone number, and you should have received that also from Cody in an email communication from Cody.
Cody will not be. Excuse me. Cody will not be back in the office. Just to let you know, if you're trying to reach her, until June 29th. But
okay.
we're available to talk with you or email you.
Okay, and the last thing we ask of you, as I mentioned early on, this is the first year that we're doing the training by video conference, and we'd like to get your feedback on the training. So you should have received a link in one of the emails from Cody with the training evaluation survey. If you'll please take just a few minutes, it's a very short survey. We'd like to hear from you.
And one more thing, this recording will be available. We'll send you a link to this particular recording. I think you'll probably want to listen to the one, if you want to listen to it again, or you can also, folks, if you load up the recording it'll be in a format, an MP4 format that can be loaded up with any software that you have, with your Windows software or with your Mac software. You can also advance the recording to the place you want to hear about. So you don't have to listen to the whole thing. It's just like a video on YouTube. You can start at the middle, you can go to the end, listen to the last part, or the part about the data gathering. Whatever works for you, you can listen to portions of it and just refresh yourself about the instructions on this. And again, I guess if you have any questions, just let us know.
Okay, so I want to thank you so much for joining us this morning. Thank you for your time, and thank you for going out and doing the PEP lessons and agreeing to do the interviews. As Dan said earlier, we're finding this is a really important study, and we did a pilot study in 2012 that was very successful, and there are people throughout the country that are talking about the PEP program and replicating it. So the work that you're doing now to help us with the evaluation will go on to a final report, and will help others who are interested in doing this type of education and evaluation at food pantries. So thank you once again, and I hope everybody has a great day. Any final questions? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.